us live on social media. All right, it is 6 o'clock. Let me make sure we're good to go. All right, welcome everyone. We are so happy to see you here tonight. My name is Donalisa Stinyard. I'm the program director with the Center for Women Entrepreneurs, and Tracy will be here shortly. So just to all the grant winners, welcome. We're so glad to see you here. A quick note, you should have received an invitation to your business plan in Live Plan. If you didn't the last couple of days, you should have today. If you did not, and I believe you did because I did it myself, but in case you didn't, email me and let me know, and we'll make sure we get you set up in there. And that's where you can use that for your business plan. So welcome everyone. We are here tonight with our small business training with the Center for Women Entrepreneurs, who was funded by the Texas legislature in 2015 to help women start and grow their business. And the Center for Women Entrepreneurs is part of TWU's Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership. The JNIWL is dedicated to preparing women to take on successful roles in business and public service to ensure women have the education to establish careers as successful C-suite executives, the skills for building entrepreneurial businesses, and the framework needed to run for public office. And tonight, I'm so excited, back by popular demand, is a friend and partner to the Center for Women Entrepreneurs, Amy Doze. She is a property and casualty insurance agent and risk management advisor with more than 15 years of professional experience. Having worked for 10 years as a senior underwriter for Chubb Insurance, Amy has a unique perspective to negotiate on behalf of her clients. She creates risk management and insurance programs to protect a company's bottom line, employees, customers, vendor relationships, and investors. All of those very important. Amy is a graduate of the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas at Austin. She is an ordained Presbyterian elder, volunteer Tarrant County voter registrar, and supporter of many homeless outreach organizations, and a proud mom of 3 busy kiddos. So without further ado, Amy, welcome to our small business training.
Thank you, Donalisa. Thank you for having me. And you might get to hear those 3 busy kiddos tonight because everybody's home. And I had intended to be downtown at our Fort Worth office this evening, but received an email this afternoon that they're going to be testing the fire alarm systems. And that's just the kind of luck I bring tonight. So anyway, I figured maybe a kid in the background is better than the fire alarms going off. I don't know. Hopefully we'll make it through. We'll try to be pretty quick and easy talking about everybody's favorite subject, insurance, obviously. All right, I will share my screen here and let me know if you can see it. Everybody see that? All right, and getting the thumbs up. Let's see. Okay, so we'll talk about insurance for small business tonight. And really, my intent is to be very high level. I realize insurance is not the most glamorous subject, but I actually think it's really fun. And I'm proud of each of you for being here and learning about it. And I think insurance is really important. And I would love to chat with you anytime if you have questions. I'm really, I hope, approachable and easy to work with. So you'll kind of get to know me a little bit maybe as we go forward. So to me, really, you all are risk takers. You've taken some step you've had some idea, you're trying to better your lives, better your family's lives, and you've got this business plan. So you're already daring, wonderful women, which I love. And so I can't wait to hear your stories. But we'll talk tonight about risk management and what it means to be daring, a little bit about business insurance, common types of business insurance, and then we'll talk about developing your risk profile and what that means. So that sounds like a lot, and I can talk really fast, but I promise it's not going to be too bad. Not going to take too long either. So risk, which we'll talk about a lot, really is exposure to danger or harm. And so we'll think about risk tonight in terms of your small business. So what you want to do with your business is consider your exposure to loss. So if something really bad happens in your business, are you just going to lose your investment, the money that you've put into your business? Or could there be something worse that happens? Could there be some actual property damage, because of your business, or some kind of a lawsuit? So you might be wondering what this picture is all about. And during the pandemic, which I guess we're still in, but during the height of the pandemic, there was an app that came out called Swimply. And this sounded like a great idea. So if I had a pool, I wish I did. If I did, I could join Swimply and on the app and kind of make a business out of my pool and rent it out by the hour, which sounds like a really cool idea. And, I could make $50 an hour. My neighbors could come over and swim in my pool. Great idea until somebody gets hurt. And then I start to look at my contract I have with Swimply that I didn't read and I just agreed to at the end. And I see that Swimply, the app, takes no liability at all. They're going to push all that off to me. And then I look in my homeowner's policy and I see that I don't have any insurance because I've actually started a business out of my home, which a lot of people do. And then, in this case, it could be really bad because accidents certainly happen at pools. So just wanted to kind of get us thinking about, what it could mean from an insurance and risk standpoint. So really the biggest threats to any business fall into 5 categories. Natural disasters, they're going to happen. Man-made problems, that's a simple one to think about. Accidents or acts of violence, unfortunately, do happen. You see technology and cyber crimes. That could be as simple as your software has failed and now there's a threat to your business because you're not able to get online or do your business. Or maybe you've been hacked and now you're a victim of ransomware and somebody wanting money out of you and they've taken your servers hostage. This happens a lot, unfortunately. The newest threat to businesses, of course, is the pandemic. What happens in a pandemic? Can I still go on? Is my business still going to thrive? And social engineering, what that means really is just our society, which is so litigious. We have such an increase in the last 20 years of frequency of lawsuits and severity of what juries are putting out there and allowing companies to claim. So social engineering is another threat to your business. So we'll talk a little bit tonight about, are you prepared? So 60% of businesses are not prepared for disasters and emergencies. And what that means is that when there is a disaster or an emergency, unfortunately for small businesses, a nonprofit called SCORE estimates that 40% of small businesses go out of business within 5 years following a disaster. So that's why insurance is important. So how daring are you? There's kind of 4 very high-level, broad ways to think about insurance. You can either avoid the risk. So say I wanted to start a boutique and sell children's clothes, and I've discovered that a risk is that my employees or my customers might steal my inventory, steal my product. So I decide I'm going to completely avoid that, and I'm going to create an online boutique, and I'm not going to have any employees. I'm going to do it myself. I don't have any customers. So I've avoided that risk. That's one thing I could do if that were my concern as a business owner. Or I could mitigate and prevent the risk. Maybe I want to be very careful about who I hire, and I want to run background checks on them and do the best I can to hire what I hope are quality people. Or maybe I prevent it by putting notices out that, this area is being videotaped, something like that. I think about my risk and think I still want to have an in-person store, but maybe there are some things I can do to help the risk not be quite as large as I think that it is. Another thing I could do is just have a nice bank account and I can retain the risk. If there's going to be some inventory that's lost, if that happens, I'll pay for it. Or the fourth thing is insurance, also known as risk transfer. So I could, if I were a small business owner of a boutique selling amazing children's clothes, I could transfer the risk to an insurance company. I would buy an insurance policy and the insurance company would kind of take a bet on me. So if there was a big theft overnight and I came into my store the next day and all my inventory were gone, I would have transferred the risk to the insurance company and filed a claim, and the insurance carrier would then pay for my lost inventory. So this is probably pretty simple stuff. I'm sure you all know this, but just kind of high level risk management. So when you're thinking about your business, you want to identify all the different types of risk and things that could happen that could affect your business negatively. So you identify them, you protect them, you kind of test your plan out, and you're constantly evaluating as you move forward and improving your risk management plan. So I have a handy little crisis management checklist, and this is actually a really nice little exercise that you can go through if you'd like. You're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to email you back this. No strings attached at all. And it might be helpful as you're trying to go through all the different types of risk that could be associated with your business. So I don't know how to chat while I'm in here, but my email is just my name, amy.doze@frostinsurance.com. And I think I have it on my last slide too. But I'm happy to email this to you if it might be helpful as you're thinking about risk management and insurance. So insurance, yay. What exactly is it? We know it's risk transfer. It's the promise of restoration. So if my inventory is lost, insurance promises to restore the amount up to the limit of the policy that I've purchased. It's not going to give me any more than that, but just from what I've purchased and lost. It's a guarantee for compensation for that specified loss or damage or illness or death. As long as I'm paying my premium, the insurance company, the insurance carrier, going to do what they need to do. When you're thinking about liability insurance, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, liability insurance often also includes defense dollars, which is really important because if you are sued, then you need to go out and hire an attorney, which is really expensive. So liability policies provide the costs that would be associated for you in getting an attorney, and then any damages that you might owe somebody else because of some negligence or fault to your business. Some things to think about that insurance is not, it's not everything. Let's see if I can move this. It's not a maintenance contract. It's not intended to cover every scenario. Insurance contracts can be very complicated with lots of exclusions and endorsements. There's no coverage for fraud. There's no coverage for past work that you might have done. So it's a contract that you would have for your work or your business going forward. In other words, you can't purchase an insurance policy now and then say, well, 2 years ago, my inventory was stolen. Doesn't work that way. It's not a way to make extra money. Again, it's that promise of restoration. And it doesn't only protect you from extraordinary events. So it's not just for the tornado that might come through and damage your business. It's also going to pay for things like small property that might be lost in transit, or
Okay, we are back. Evidently lost connection. Do we have Amy on here? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you. So how are you, Donna Lisa?
I'm doing fine. Oh,
Does this feel like a Monday, Tuesday to anyone else?
yeah,
Oh, no,
for sure. Amy, are you there?
I'm here, but let's see if I can get my video on. Oh, there we are. I don't know what happened. I got kicked out or something.
I think I lost connection, regretfully. You know how it goes sometimes.
I'm
So
sorry if my insurance talk put you to sleep, Donna Lisa.
no, it didn't. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all. I'm glad we got back in. Shall I share my screen again?
Yes.
Okay. Well, at least we don't have my frost fire alarms going off in the background, so that is okay. No big deal. Okay. Are we back up and running?
I think so.
Okay. So I think we covered all these points about insurance and what it is and what it's not. And now we get to the Tom Jones portion of the evening. Let's see if I can, oh goodness, it's gonna make me start over. Sorry, guys. Don't worry, Tom Jones is coming. Okay, oh, there he is. Okay, are you with me? Got a thumbs up. Okay, so you can get insurance for anything. This is just kind of my little silly, jokey slide. I mean, actually, I'm going to look at my notes so I get this right, because Tom Jones has insured his chest hair for $7 million. He feels it's very important to his career. So if something happens to his chest hair and he's no longer able to work and make money, he has an insurance policy that will pay him $7 million. America Ferrera, who is now the face of Aquafresh. Aquafresh bought a policy for her teeth, which are so important to their campaigning, for $10 million. So they put all this money into a campaign. If something happens to her face and teeth and she can no longer sell toothpaste for Aquafresh, Aquafresh will cash in their policy for $10 million. I just always find these little things interesting. Heidi Klum has both of her legs insured. They're insured under different insurance policies. Her left leg is worth $1.2 million, and her right leg is only worth $1 million because she has a small scar on that leg. How sad for her. Anyway, so she's got her legs insured through Victoria's Secret because that's how she makes a living, and she feels like she would no longer be able to work if something happened to her leg, so she would collect insurance. David Beckham, always looking nice there. He has his family has a policy on him. If he has a life-threatening injury and can no longer play soccer and can no longer work for their family, he will cash in a policy for $151 million. And then the one I find most peculiar, and I don't sell this type of insurance, I'm not sure where you would find it if you were interested, is alien insurance. And I understand over 20,000 Americans have purchased this. If they are to be kidnapped by aliens, then there is some sort of a life insurance policy that will pay their families. So whoever said insurance is boring, have them call me.
I'm sorry. How do you put in the claims? I mean, these people like you got a car wreck, like they're literally going to call in the claims for their legs or for the aliens. Like, how would you know?
The aliens is ridiculous. It's a good question. The other ones would be investigated. They would send some sort of investigator out to see, are the legs injured? They probably have to claim, some sort of medical injury paperwork to go with it. I'm sure there's lots of stipulations to these policies, which are kind of silly, but that's insurance. Some of it's a little bit silly, but some of it's important. So we'll get to the important stuff about business insurance and why you need it to cover your business. It's also known as commercial insurance. You might hear that term. We're a litigious society. We talked about that. People in our country sue each other all the time over things that don't even make any sense, but it happens. Insurance minimizes your financial risk. You've put money into your business. You've worked really hard. You don't want to lose it. There are contractual requirements that will require that you have insurance. Lease agreements will, certain vendors will, lenders absolutely will. Some insurance is mandatory. It's compulsory in some states like Texas. We are required to have auto insurance on our personal policies, and we're required to carry it too if you have commercial vehicles. A lot of business is not covered under a typical homeowner's policy, so something to think about. Business insurance protects your personal assets. It creates peace of mind. I think anything we can do to lower anxiety is a good thing. So business insurance definitely does that. And it can also be an employee benefit for your workers as far as workers' compensation. So when do you need to think about purchasing business insurance? Once you start to have some assets in the company name or customers or vendors or a website, that's when it really is a great time to start the conversation about how and when, what kind of business insurance that you need to have. So hopefully that's helpful. And this is a long list of just the most common types of business insurance. Not all of these apply to every business. These are just the most common ones that you'd want to consider. And sometimes it's something that can build in the future, right? You might not have employees at this time, so you really don't need workers' compensation. But in the future, you might have some employees, and then you want to talk about it and consider that. So unfortunately, 75% of small businesses are underinsured by 40% or more, which means we go back to that risk. If something bad happens and there is a disaster, you're either paying out of pocket or you just have to fold the business. So maybe you can appreciate my office slides coming up. One of my favorite shows, property insurance. We're going to talk about this one first. And again, this is like super high level. If you have specific questions, shout them out or put them in the chat or call me later. But when you're thinking about property insurance, this is property, first party property that you actually own. Okay, maybe you've bought a building, maybe you've got some inventory or stock, maybe you've bought some furniture to stock a leased location. Property insurance is what you want to think about. And I recommend certainly that you have insurance, but that you keep really good receipts and records of anything that you buy that might be used for your business. I think that can be very helpful. And a lot of property losses, I'll just run down this really quickly. 20% of property claims to insurance carriers are from burglary or theft. 15% is due to water damage or freezing. 15% from wind or hail, and 10% from fire. That'll just kind of give you an idea. There's oftentimes a deductible, so you want to think about that. And flood insurance is typically not an insured peril under a property policy. Flood insurance is typically a different type of policy.
Amy, we do have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Does property insurance cover someone else's property that your inventory is being warehoused at?
If let me make sure I understand the question right. So you're warehousing somebody else's property, or you've got inventory stored somewhere else, it sounds like.
Sorry, I asked the question, so I was just going to clarify it. Hi, how are you? Thank you for the chat. But if you are warehousing your inventory on somebody else's property, like a vendor, is your inventory covered?
You'd want to look at your contract between you and that vendor to see who's responsible if something happens to the inventory.
Okay. What if I haven't drafted the contract yet? I guess I should put some type of terms in there.
I would put some terms in there that if it's in their care, custody, and control, if it's in their warehouse, then they should be responsible for the insurance.
Okay. And then double check their insurance policy.
Sure. You can ask for what's called a certificate of insurance, and that should show you what type of insurance they have, and will also give you the insurance carrier name. So if there is a problem and there is a tornado that comes through there or wind damage and now your inventory is damaged, then you would be able to make a claim under their insurance policy.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
And we
That's
had one more, Amy. If we have a home-based business, could we or would we need an additional policy to cover our business assets or property?
Most likely, yes. You would want to review that homeowner's policy with your agent, or I'm happy to take a look at it, or look at the policy. Sometimes there's a little bit of coverage in there for business contents or business insurance, but oftentimes at that point, if you're operating a business out of your home, it's recommended that at that point you purchase business insurance, which is also going to protect your personal assets. So you've got insurance in the name of your company that's going to cover any kind of problems or issues that might arise out of the company, and protect your personal assets, keeping your personal assets separate.
Thank you for answering that.
Sure. It's confusing. I mean, it is. It's insurance. It is confusing. So property is just one type of the world of insurance. Next is general liability and professional liability, two separate things. So property was your first party property that you own. General liability is third party claims. So that's when my product has caused injury to somebody and now they're coming after me and suing me. So my makeup that I've sold has someone's broken out in a rash and now they've got to go to their doctor. They've incurred expenses. They want me to pay the expenses because my makeup did it to them. Things like that. It would also cover premises liability. So even if you're operating out of your home and you might have a customer coming to your home and they slip and fall in your driveway even, or the area outside of your home or in your home, that's where a general liability policy would come into play. There are defense costs built into that, which I think I maybe pointed out earlier. That's when if you need to hire an attorney, which unfortunately does happen, this policy will help you pay for that attorney and will find the right attorney based on the type of lawsuit that you might be involved with. So very important. Professional liability is a little bit different. It's financial injury insurance. And that means it's protecting you from contractual liability. And again, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. Sounds a little bit crazy. But if you've agreed to something in a contract and you just have not met your end of the contract, nobody's hurt. There's not actual bodily injury or property damage to somebody else because of your product. Nobody's slipped and fall, but you have not upheld your end of a contract. So somebody in that contract has lost money because you haven't done your end of the deal. That's when you need professional liability insurance. So again, try not to confuse everything. Just another type of insurance. Not every kind of company needs professional liability insurance. General liability.
I'm sorry. Does professional liability insurance, like general, does that come along with the attorney fee or anything of that nature?
That's a great question. And yes, it does. Professional liability also includes defense costs. And usually a typical insurance limit for professional liability would maybe be $1 million. That's probably the most typical. So it's a little bit different with professional liability. They would give you $1 million. That's going to include your defense costs within that $1 million, and then any payments for injury to the third party that you might be owed. They might be owed that you've got to pay. With general liability, you would purchase a $1 million policy, but defense costs are unlimited. So insurance just, they structure them differently, but yes, both include defense costs. Attorney fees.
I had a question about how they determine the rate for general liability, say on like a consumer product. Is it, how do they scrutinize?
That's a great question. It's going to be based on the class of business. So we'll come up with the class code for what you're doing, and then it's based on revenues. And oftentimes it is audited. So after the policy expires, we might say, oh, I'm going to purchase insurance in 2022. And I'm expecting to do $1 million in revenues. So they're going to base the policy, the insurance carrier will base the pricing of the policy on the amount of revenues that you anticipate doing and what you're doing. You know, certainly some things are much higher hazard than others. And then at the end of the policy period, they'll come back to you and say, okay, now what were your sales? You might say, oh, they were only 500,000. So the insurance company is going to give you back some money, some of that premium that you paid. Or you might say, kicked it out, made $5 million bucks. They're going to want more money. Great questions, y'all. Keep them coming. I love it.
I have a question about technology startup. My
Yes.
company is a technology startup, so I don't have a physical office. And my employees are remotely working. One is in Texas. One is in California, the other one is in Washington. They're using their own personal computers, and all of our code is on the cloud. And I'm wondering how to think about insurance in this kind of a setup.
Mhm. Are your employees independent contractors, or are they actual employees of your business?
Currently they're part-time, and they're not independent contractors. There's something else, the other category. I should know, I'm
They're
sorry.
W-9 employees, so they're like,
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
yes. Okay. Yeah, so we can certainly talk offline about it if you want to shoot me an email, but I would certainly think about, having some general liability, and I'm not sure what kind of technology startup you have. And congratulations, that's awesome that you're doing that. But you might need some professional liability too. It might be that contracts will require you to have both of them.
Okay, thank you. I'll send you an email later.
Yeah, shoot me an email. We'll talk it out.
Thank
That's
you.
that's the fun stuff. Okay, so general liability and professional. Moving on. Commercial automobile insurance. This one's pretty easy. I'm sure most of you are familiar with personal automobile insurance if you have your own vehicle. But when we work in the business or commercial world of automobile, kind of like your homeowners, it's a whole different type of insurance. If you own a vehicle and you're putting it in your company name, you need insurance for that under a commercial policy. If you're renting a vehicle, leasing a vehicle, borrowing a vehicle in the company name, any of that, you need to insure it separately. And the biggest one that I have highlighted in red there is non-owned. So if you have an employee, is it Renita? You might have an employee who you've asked to run an errand on the company business in their own, you might not own vehicles yet. You're asking them to run an errand in their own car, which I do all the time for Frost. I go see clients. I have my own car. I don't have a company car. I expense my miles. I have my own car. But what happens if I get into an accident on the road, me as an employee of Frost, and now I'm injured, my car's total, I've hurt somebody else. My personal insurance is not going to want to pay for that. I was on company business. So the company really is the one who should be paying for that. Plus, Frost doesn't know if I've kept up with my personal insurance. They don't keep up with that, but they purchase a policy, like most companies, small businesses have to do this as well, that would cover what's called non-owned. So Frost does not own the vehicle that I use, but they've told me, go out and do these things on the company. So just something to think about. It's really an important piece of it. And that's really where we see high dollar lawsuits, unfortunately, are due to auto claims.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question, and I don't mean to take your time. So if the answer is long, we can discuss later. But how is that different from something like driving to work with our own vehicle?
That's a good question. It's just the way it's defined in the policies. So I can get to work any which way I want to get to work. I could take the bus, or we don't have a subway in Fort Worth. That would be cool. But anyway, I can have somebody drop me off. It's up to me. It's on my own. Onus is on me to get to and from work. But once I'm at work and my job tells me you need to get on the road and run this errand for the company, or do this on behalf of the company and drive your own vehicle, then I'm on the company dime, and the company insurance should kick in if there's a problem.
I see. Thank you.
Y'all are full of great questions. This is a great group. I love it. Keep them coming. I need the challenge. It's good. So anyway, that's auto insurance.
My question, it was before, I wrote it in the chat, but is it an either or when it comes to the professional and the general? Is it or is there a situation where you would get both?
You would definitely, it depends on the business, but yes, it's not an either or, it would be a both situation, depending on the type of business.
Thank you.
Yeah, general liability being more common.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? So I have a construction company, and my GC, general contractor, has drives the vehicle. He's also part owner of the company. And he said that we should go ahead and put all the vans and the trucks in a commercial automobile insurance as opposed to personal.
I
And
agree.
it said it's better, it's safer, and the liabilities, it'll mitigate the risk from a personal level. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. And you want to make sure those vehicles are titled in the company name. And if they're not, you would either want to retitle them in the company name or have a formal lease agreement that the company has leased these vehicles for use. And I have a copy that I can send you if that's helpful. But yes, when you put it in the company name, it protects your personal assets. So if you accidentally hit somebody on the road and they see the insurance card, they see the company name, that it's insured through a company, and they're not coming after you and your family individually for punitive damages or something terrible. Definitely, protect your personal assets by putting it in a commercial policy.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. I have another question, if I may, as well, about the liability. So we have the coverage, and we're shopping around for a more maybe cost-effective package. And so we're at an impasse because one of the guys that's a part of the partner, he has his own insurance, his own workman comp and his liability and all that good stuff. And my brother, who's my partner, is saying we should go ahead and cover him too. And I'm thinking, why? Why are we paying for double? He has his coverage. We don't need to cover him. All I need to cover is you, because you're doing the work in addition to supervising the job. And we're using subcontractors and we're getting their certificate of insurance, so we don't need to cover them.
If you've got a certificate of insurance, you don't need to cover them if you have a certificate of insurance, and that's built into your contract with your GC or your sub.
Okay, so just make sure I have that for every job that we have.
That's what I'd recommend. And I can send you, if you're interested, what the limits that we recommend when you're dealing with subcontractors. Yeah, shoot me an email so I have your information. But I have kind of a cheat sheet that I use with contractors that I work with, saying, this is what we recommend. Every job that you have, every contractor you're working with, these are the limits of insurance we recommend. And certainly obtain those certificates of insurance so you have proof of it. And that you're notified if that insurance is canceled. Another piece of it.
Okay. Is your email in the chat?
I hope so. I'm not able to see the chat since I'm sharing.
I put it in there.
Yes, it is.
I've put it in there several times.
Oh, thank you, Donna Lisa. Yeah, Amy.Doze at frostinsurance.com. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's there. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Okay, so commercial auto insurance. I think we got that one down. Feeling pretty good about that. Workers' comp is not required in the state of Texas. So that's kind of interesting. Two interesting things about work comp in Texas.
Can we go back? I'm sorry. I typed mine in there because I didn't want to really interrupt anyone. But my question was, if I'm renting a space for like a vending machine and a landlord is asking me for a whole harmless cost, is it okay for me to also include an exception for like gross negligence or recklessness, something like that?
In your contract?
Yes.
I have to look at it to understand.
Yeah, he wants the whole harmless clause included. So he doesn't have any liability whatsoever, but his guests at his facility, they may, kids messing around, whatever, may cause damage to it. So I just want to have that exception in there for gross negligence. And so
you can put anything in a contract you want to. I think that's a better question for an attorney, to be honest. But I mean, you can put anything in a contract if both parties agree to it. And you can also be sued for anything. I mean, that's something to remember. Even though you might have a contract, doesn't necessarily prevent somebody from suing you, even if the contract says that. There's these attorneys find ways around it. But certainly the intent of a contract is important. And I'd recommend running that one off of an attorney, which I'm not. I'm just an insurance nerd.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And I'm sorry that I cannot see the chat because I've got my whole screen up. So just stop me anytime. Workers' comp. I was going to tell you what I think are interesting things about workers' comp in Texas. It's not required. You do not have to purchase workers' comp. And secondly, workers' comp benefits do apply to non-documented workers. So in the state of Texas, if you have a worker and your team that is not documented, they can still have workers' comp benefits to no punishment at all, if that helps. It's a wage replacement. If somebody's injured on the job, it replaces their wages while they're out of work. It provides their medical costs. There's an actual death benefit in workers' comp. If somebody dies on the job, it will pay death benefits and funeral burial benefits to the family of the deceased worker. Again, not mandatory in Texas. A lot of family-owned businesses decide they don't want to purchase workers' comp, and I would really encourage you to think a lot about that, because it's really sad when family businesses go south because somebody has been injured on the job, and then there's a dispute, and there's no money to pay for the injury or for the medical costs. And in Texas, workers' compensation is very affordable. Insurance, every other line of insurance we're talking about, the premiums increase every year. Workers' comp is the only line of insurance where we're actually seeing decreases in premium. You'd be surprised at how affordable it is. And it is also an audited policy. We talked about general liability policies being audited based on revenues or sales. Workers' comp is based on payroll and class codes of payroll. So if you have a lot of clerical workers, people behind their desks most of the day, very affordable. If you're a contractor up on 10-foot roofs, repairing roofs, you're going to see a different base rate in the workers' compensation. So, and it's always something too you could price and then consider whether or not it makes sense for you to purchase.
Amy, we had another question in the chat. As a mobile licensed massage therapist, what additional insurance do you recommend? They are not a business entity.
Well, I think you would have to be a business entity to purchase business insurance. So that would be the first thing. I think that would protect your personal assets, is to consider maybe setting up an LLC. And I think that there might be resources, Donna Lisa, through what all you do, maybe to help.
In fact, next week is all about setting up your business entity.
Yes, so that would be the first step, because you would purchase business insurance in the name of the business entity. So that would be the first step. And then I would definitely, and there's lots of different insurance that you'd want to consider for business like that. Unfortunately, the one that comes to mind the most, and I work with a lot of daycares, and this is awful to talk about on a Tuesday night, but is a sexual and abuse and molestation policy, which can be an add-on to a general liability policy. Again, being a litigious society, it's not necessarily what you do, it's what you're accused of doing. So when you're in an environment like that, you could be accused of some pretty awful things. So that would be the number one thing that I would think that your exposure would be with a mobile masseuse business. So happy to chat more about that as you get up and running. You can buzz me.
I was a mobile physical therapist, and I had professional liability insurance, and I was not an LLC. So
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but we're required to carry it. So because we're like medically licensed. So I don't know if it's different.
Maybe, I don't know. And there might be some, like there are for physical therapists, there probably are. I would even just Google it to see if there's any kind of group policies that you can join, which would be maybe more affordable than having one on your own as a masseuse therapist too. Yeah, something to think about. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, umbrella liability. We talked a little bit about the kind of limits that you'd have under general liability. Commercial auto limits on the policy are typically $1 million as well. Oftentimes, as businesses grow, that is not enough limit. So you may require, certainly you're in construction business, you'll see this on your contracts, that you're required to have an umbrella policy. And even some families will purchase this if they do have, a trampoline or a pool, and they're worried that if there is a lawsuit, it could hit above $1 million. So they'd purchase an umbrella policy. Almost all my clients have one as well. Just gives you higher limits of insurance. It sits over the general liability policy and the auto policy. Just provides higher limits if there is any kind of a lawsuit. Cyber liability insurance, 5 years ago.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have an umbrella on my home because I have several different properties. So I have an umbrella with my cars and the properties. But on the business side, we don't have an umbrella. We just have the workman comp, the general liability, all the other pieces that are important for a business to have. So you're saying it's recommended for a business as well to get an umbrella policy?
It's recommended for most businesses, especially if you have any kind of automobile exposure. If you're on the road at all for your business, it's something to consider. And umbrella policies are actually, depending on what you're doing, I think they're very affordable. And it's easier to get them now when you aren't required to have one by a contract than when a contract comes in and says you need a $5 million umbrella policy and you're in a scramble, if that makes sense. But I mean, we can talk it out if you want to give me a buzz tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure. So cyber liability is really interesting, and we see a lot of claims for cyber liability, and I could spend an hour talking about just that. It's really an interesting thing. We used to not really even talk about it, and then 5 years ago recommended it to maybe our technology clients. And now in insurance, we are recommending cyber liability to every client that we have and making them sign a waiver that says they don't want it, if they don't want it, which is fine. But we want to make sure they understand that they were offered it because it is that important. We are seeing a significant amount of increase in claims in cyber liability, which could mean a virus on your computer. You've clicked on an email, and it's taken you somewhere else, and now your computer system's completely shut down. You can have a virus take over a manufacturing plant. Viruses are now shutting down entire school districts and hospital networks, and including small businesses as well. So network damage, information theft, ransomware, all of that type of exposure is not covered under a general liability policy. It's excluded. So you would have to purchase what's called cyber liability, and that would pay for the cost of your software to get back up and running, all the expense that you might incur investigating that, and then as well as third-party expenses. If the criminal who's found this information on your computer, if you've got social security numbers or credit card information, any kind of personal identifiable information, if they've released that, and now you've incurred a cost to have this monitored, it's a whole process. So just very briefly, cyber liability. And you can see the average cost to small businesses and what that means. And I've got so much information on this. I can email you if you're interested in hearing more about it. And then very briefly, I'm going to touch on this. As your company grows, it's something to consider. I don't think it's maybe necessary for a startup business, but as you grow and you have a lot of employees and you want to think about things like employment practices liability. And this covers discrimination, sexual harassment, invasion of privacy, wrongful termination, all the things that we saw in the Me Too movement. Those are not typically covered under insurance policy. But if I go to my employer and say, I feel like you fired me because I turned 40 or I'm a mom or, many reasons you could be discriminated against. The employer would need what's called an employment practices liability policy to get defense costs for something like that. Directors and officers covers your board of directors when you get to that level of your business. And then there's what's called crime insurance. So if you're worried that you've got employees who might be stealing inventory or stealing any kind of money and security from you, there's an insurance policy for that crime. And that's a pretty typical insurance policy as well. So just highlighting, not trying to scare anybody, just highlighting different types of insurance. And the reason you need these things is because it is, once again, excluded under that general liability policy. Life insurance is another way to manage your risk, especially if you are in a limited liability partnership or any kind of partnership. Call me and we can talk about this and what makes sense. But if you have a key employee or you're in a partnership, and what are you going to do if that partner is permanently disabled or dies? It's a way to fund life insurance through your company. The company buys the policy. It helps you with your succession planning and what's going to happen. If I'm in a partnership with somebody, Mina, I see you on there, we're in a partnership together and I pass away, you might not want to work with my spouse, so like, it's a way to plan the next level of what happens in your business. And it's a way to fund it through the company. So something to just be aware of. So I'm an insurance agent. This is what I do. I don't work for a State Farm. I sell lots of different types of insurance through different carriers. Insurance agents like me, this is kind of a 101 on what this means. We're paid by the insurance carrier, the company. So we're paid a commission based on that. You, as a small business owner, do not have to pay for the services of a broker. The broker is paid by the insurance carrier. And what we do is help you evaluate your risk and determine what makes sense from an insurance standpoint, and what doesn't make sense. Insurance agents like mine, we've got 60 employees in downtown Fort Worth. I'm with Frost Insurance. We're part of Frost Bank. You probably have heard of them. We have our own insurance agent within the bank. And we have claims handling expertise in Fort Worth. So we have a person that if there is a claim, I go to Jordan and say, help us navigate this, help us look at the policy and try to find coverage and work with the carrier on your behalf to do that. We have a lot of risk management resources, all brokers do. And our goal is to try to find the best pricing, but also the best terms in the marketplace. So based on what you do, we would go to maybe 5 or 10, depending on your industry, different insurance carriers, have them all bid on the insurance. Then the insurance agent gets all those bids back and goes through them and then makes a recommendation to you based on that. So that's kind of what that means. Insurance agents work with only, at least my agency does, with only insurance carriers that are very reputable and are rated very well by the insurance commission. So that really matters. You don't want to buy insurance from an insurance carrier that's not going to be able to pay your claim. So it's an important business partner as you're moving along, and you need business partners in your business as it's growing. Like you need a banker that you can trust. You need an insurance agent that you can trust that has your back, and it's not trying to get you to buy a bunch of stuff you don't need, but rather recognize the risks that you have and then go from there. And build as your business builds. So that's just a little bit about how kind of the industry works and what I do. So anyway, back to taking risks and being daring. Hopefully I've given you a little food for thought as you think about protecting your businesses. I think it's awesome that each of you are, developing your story and you're doing something brave, and I admire you for it. And I love to hear stories about women who have done these things. So let me know what you're up to. There's my information. So that's really all I've got. I'm happy to answer questions or shoot me email, text. I'm pretty easy to get in touch with, but not next week. Next week is Thanksgiving. I'm taking the week off. My brother is coming in town from Tennessee, and I haven't seen him in 2 years. And I'm like, I can't sleep. I'm so excited, but I will answer my cell phone usually. So anyway, that's just a joke. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
That's awesome. So who has some questions for Amy?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I own a custom curly hair product company. So basically beauty technology type of company. I am not really sure with a small budget where I should allot my money if I'm going to go about insurance. What's like the 1 or 2 top insurances that we should have as like beauty technology company?
I think that's awesome what you're doing. And it's a great question. It's a really fair question because insurance is something that you kind of have to budget for. I mean, it does sometimes get expensive, but just based on what little you've told me, you'd want to definitely have general liability insurance, which includes products liability insurance. So just knowing that little bit, the worst thing that can happen is if I use your product, I didn't follow the directions, I've now burned my face or something, and I'm going to call you and say your product, doesn't matter what I did, your product did this, whether it did it or not, I'm going to sue you. And now you need to hire an attorney to defend your lawsuit. And that would be covered under general liability insurance.
Okay. For a small business, how much is general liability insurance typically?
It really varies, but it's based on what you do, like your industry, and then your sales or revenue. So there's no way for me to even predict that without knowing a lot more. I mean, it can be hundreds of dollars. It can be hundreds of thousands of dollars for a large company. For a startup, it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to be that bad. You just would want to work with an insurance agent to get you some quotes from multiple carriers. So then you kind of know, what it's worth.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question regarding trademarking. I'm in the process of getting ready to be trademarked. Is that more of a professional liability insurance?
So you would be looking for like defensive coverage if somebody else were to use your trademark? Whoo, that's a whole different world of insurance, and it is not cheap. It's not cheap. You have some coverage built into general liability in the event that you have infringed on somebody else's advertising or trademark, and you've accidentally, or maybe on purpose, I don't know, used somebody else's slogan or something. There's a little coverage in there for that, but not the reverse side, not for defensively. Like if you're defending your patent and now you want an insurance policy to go after somebody else who's used your patent or trademark, there is insurance for that. It is not cheap and it's not easy to get. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. That's just the truth.
If you wanted to quote general liability on a new product that you have invented, so it's not out yet, do you have to actually have the product to get the insurance quote? Like, does the insurance need to see what it is you're doing physically?
They would ask a lot of questions. You would fill out an application as you would for any of these types of insurance. They're going to ask a lot of questions. I don't know that you need insurance if you don't have a product. I don't know what the exposure would be if you don't have a product yet.
Oh, I guess I do, but I just didn't know if they needed to see it.
Oh, no, not necessarily see it, but they might, if you have a website, that would be helpful to look at, or we would just provide a description of the product as best we can. But you probably
I already sent you an email, so.
Oh, cool. But you probably don't need insurance until you actually have people using the product. I mean, I wouldn't want you to buy something that you don't need yet.
Well, but the thing is when you invent a product and you're testing it, things can happen while you're testing it as well. Accidents can happen. So I didn't really know if it was covered under, I have general liability as a physical therapist, but I'm not even sure if that covers that. It probably does, maybe doesn't. It's kind of a gray area for me, but the product's almost fully done, but I've always had this question about insurance regarding inventing a product and using it on people.
Yes, I think that in that case, then you would want to have some general liability insurance. If there's any kind of risk that there could be third-party bodily injury to somebody else, then where the general liability would cover that.
That was a great question.
So many good questions, and all these inventors and business owners. I'm like, I know. I'm excited. I'm excited for the future.
Yes. So hello, I jumped in late, but Mina, that was a good question, but you may want to ask the lawyer next week as well, because if you're ever going to patent something, there are certain times you can't discuss it with anybody. So you might want to, so there could be some issues there. So you may want to ask again next week that question.
That's a good question, Tracy. And oftentimes we are, as insurance agent, required to complete non-disclosure agreements or sign them. And we can do that, where we keep everything under lock and key as best we can and only deal with certain underwriters if it's a top secret product or something. We have companies that work with NASA, and we have to be very careful about what we learn and how we disclose information. So we understand that for sure. It's important.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions?
I have one more question.
Sure.
And this one is about medical insurance. I know it's not related to this, but maybe this is for Donalisa. Is there a session on how to provide medical insurance for employees of a small business?
That is not a session, but that is something that I don't know if Amy can speak a little bit to, or you can also reach out and speak with Tracy or send us an email and we can help you with that.
We do have at Frost Insurance a small business unit for group policies. And that's not what I specialize in, but I do understand that you can get a group policy, a medical policy for a group with as little as 2 people. It is not affordable. It is very expensive. It's lovely of you to consider it for your employees, because it is, you know, as a mom and woman, like I'm grateful that I have health insurance. I'm blessed to have it. But they can certainly price it for you and give you some more information about that. It's a wonderful employee benefit if you're able to offer it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll send you an email.
I have a question. Is there a difference when someone asks you for the COI and you just give them the general one versus someone asking them to be listed on there as the certificate holder? What's the difference between the two?
They're one and the same, really. A COI, she's referring to, is called a certificate of insurance. And so sometimes, like if you're leasing space in a building, for instance, the landlord is going to require a COI. They're going to want proof that you have insurance. They're going to want proof that you have general liability and property insurance, and maybe an umbrella. And it's possible that the landlord is going to want to be listed on the certificate of insurance. We get those requests all day long. We have a whole department that processes them. It's such a big part of insurance, and it's fine. It's just there's a paper trail then that's created, and they can actually even be listed on the policy, the certificate holder, or the additional insured, so that they're notified if your insurance lapses in any way, or you haven't paid your premium and now you don't have insurance. So the insurance carrier is now going to notify the landlord that you don't have insurance. So they will actually be listed on the certificate of insurance. Is usually how that paper trail works. But very, very common request. Totally normal.
All right, thank you. I was just
Sure.
curious what the difference was.
All right, any more questions? All right, Amy, thank you so much for being here, and I will turn it over to Tracy.
Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, Amy. It was nice to see so many questions too, and that people, are really interested. I mean, it's so important to have insurance for your business. And I mean, there's so many different things out there that you just don't automatically know about. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate that. Well, great. It looks like we'll get out early tonight, which is nice. Does anybody have any questions though, or anything on the grant process or anything else?
Yes, I wanted to know, I sent an email in with all of the documentation. I wanted to know if I had submitted everything. I think I did, because I didn't get, feedback. But after the grant email came out that we had been winners, there was some documentation that needed to, come back. And I just wanted to make sure that I had submitted it all.
Okay. We can double check on that. Everything. We can double check in the CWE grants email, and please make sure that everything you send directly there. Everything about the grant. But if you didn't get something back, you probably did have everything correct. And so once we have everything is when it's sent for payment, and that's when it will start. Then it will take less time for the second half. But right now they have to get you set up. And so from the time we have everything, it should be about 3 weeks. It could be before that. So again, if you have questions or wondering on the timeliness or whatever, let us know. And I will look to double check that for you. Okay. Anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I had a question about the live plan. Earlier, I think Donna Lisa said we would have gotten an email. I just want to make sure I heard that correct.
You should already have been in there for a little bit because your name was already in there. And I believe I'm the one that set you up because it is set up there. Go to the email that you registered, that you used. And then if you can't find it, send something back in there. But it was set up. And if people don't go in with a certain amount of time, sometimes they lapse or you have to go back. But we've been using the email that you sent your application in. So sometimes people have more than one email and so may not see it.
Okay, I'll check again tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Tracy.
Yes.
With Hope, since you're corresponding with me via email, do I just send her what you sent me and then she can get on, or?
We should have it where you can add her as another user for that plan.
Okay, perfect.
Tracy, we have a question in the chat. What was the live plan?
Live plan is the business plan software. If you want to use that, Mona, you should have received something. Check your email. That would come with the link for that. And so to get the second half of the funding, we need a business plan. We'll need receipts for the first half. They're going to have to be paid receipts, totaled and tallied. And we want you to do that and make sure it matches, because sometimes, depending on the business, they may have 70 receipts in there. And so you need to make sure what you write out matches those, because it can also delay your second half of the funding if we don't have that. And then 3 hours is small business advising. And we sent links before. It can be with SCORE, it can be with SBDC, can be with the Women's Business Center. There's so many different options for that. But you will need to have, and if it's from someone besides the Center for Women Entrepreneurs, just have them write that they spent 3 hours with you. We don't want it 3 hours at a time, because really you can even see classes like this, an hour can be overwhelming for a lot of information at once. So, but anything we can help with anytime, we're glad to do that.
Hi, Tracy, this is Brooke. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Brooke?
I'm good. I actually had a question about doing the advisee sessions. I set one up through you all, and I met with my advisee for 1 hour, but I went back to her calendar to schedule a second and third, but it wasn't available. Yeah. I didn't see any more time.
Something there, and we'll be able to set something up with you.
Okay, so just respond back to that email.
Yeah, the CWE grants, and we can set up a time for you, or if it's the same one, because there are some that are on Zoom.
Good deal. I'll do
already
that.
In there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay. Well, great, everyone. So we will have our legal next week, right, Donna Lisa? And that's really an important one too. And it's so much that we really don't always think about. So it's really, and they will answer other questions. I mean, some of it, of course, is about setting up your business, but there are other important legal aspects you should know as well, and really how to protect yourself and your business. So we're looking forward to that.
Yes, it is choosing a business entity with Kelsey Softner, or Schofner. And she has her own consulting business. So I just viewed the slide deck. It should be a very interesting conversation. And for those of you that were asking, the replay link and Amy's slide deck, she already sent it to me. I already have it. And so that will be sent out with the replay link as well.
All right. Well, if that is it, then everybody have a great evening.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks again, Amy. We appreciate it.
Oh, always great info.